Welcome to Daily Spiritual Thought, and today's title is Knowledge and Wisdom. Today we are talking about knowledge and wisdom. In our lives, we always encounter situations where people, especially people who think differently and look different, are called stupid or primitive. But what does uneducated or primitive mean? Simple is still relatively easy to explain because there is a way of life that should be superior to all others. So it's at least conveyed to us. If we behave according to this way of life, we're supposedly educated. We think rationally, go through school, and are taught things that correspond to this way of life. And the stamp we then receive is, you are educated. Depending on how much or little you live and develop this way of life. And then it's clear that if we see any natural people, for example, in the Amazon, we talk about uneducated people. This also expands. One speaks of primitives. It becomes clear that socially we have a clear distinction, and this does not only concern primitive peoples, but also more and more people in our environment. People who are just different. Today, they are called crazy, who are just not as the system expects us to behave. What does this have to do with wisdom and knowledge? Whenever we believe that someone who has been brought up differently, has had different experiences, or has not gone through a school system and is primitive, then we are missing out an incredible amount of wisdom. The best teachers in the world are not those who have gone through the best formal education as reflected in our Western science or society. In fact, often the best and most valuable people in life to teach us are wise people who have never had access to it, who have spent their lives simply observing, being mindful and attentive, who are knowledgeable because they have listened to life, looked at it neutrally, and accepted the world as it is. Their statements correspond to the observations made by them, and there the difference becomes clear as day. Knowledge has nothing to do with life itself, but is first of all information. Wisdom consists in how we manage to integrate this knowledge into our lives, in how far we are able to understand connections. Here we are at the crucial point. Our system does not value you observing, questioning, understanding the world. It's much more about you becoming a post-sayer, a confirmer of an existing system that puts itself above everything. That you reproduce what is desired, because this system has presumed to stand above others. Let's consider an example. There are things that cannot be explained by the rational mind. For example, the Aborigines of Australia. They can communicate with each other over great distances through telepathy. Also, they feel the exact place where they have to dig to find water. This is natural for these people, and they are surprised that it's not so for others. Maybe for you, for me. Try to explain this with rationality. You can. But our mind is conditioned to it, and so we miss the wisdom of life. Ask yourself what this conditioning would cause if we would meet Jesus, Buddha, or Muhammad today, without knowing that they are, as they walked over the world at that time. Could it be that we say, how do they look like? What do they want to tell me? Yeah, maybe we would even ask them if they have an education that legitimizes them to talk about these topics. But exactly then we would miss the wisdom of life, because we act out of the mind. The real wisdom arises from the inside, the heart. If you again meet someone who is completely different from you, then try not to judge too quickly from the mind, perhaps even be dismissive, but to feel purely what life is telling you, what wisdom it wants to give you. Be aware that you can learn knowledge. Wisdom must be lived and experienced and has nothing to do with knowledge. The knower can never be wise alone. When you are wise enough to understand that you are a creative being and you make every experience because it's important for you, then you begin to appreciate the wisdom of life. Then you ask yourself in such encounters, what does life want to teach me? The greatest wisdom and the greatest gifts often find their way into your life in ways you never expected. And don't think I'm wise. I'm just trying to gently remind my fellow human beings again and again so that we can all realign ourselves together over and over and over. For now, this is Andreas from Daily Spiritual Thought. Despite all these curiosities we are experiencing right now, have a wonderful time. Thanks a lot for listening and God bless.